Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. The Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And again, this is part of my short little series of Arthur Wright knives, and this is the last of the recent batch from Heinnie Haynes. And this is the one I figured I would save for last. This is an Arthur Wright & Son Lambsfoot in ebony. Now, this is one of my favorite knives as a pattern, and in this particular case, this knife. I love this knife, and I don't really know why. Something about it just strikes me as infinitely traditional and undeniably classic. And this particular one is actually very well made, so I'll get into the quick little fit and finish and compare it with some other Wright knives. So to start, pins quite flush. You can sort of feel them, but they don't stick up considerably. So it's not a problem. It's just you can sort of tell there are pins here. Same thing on this side. Transitions are seamless, as always. Grind is perfectly even. Carbon back spring. There's a little bit of a gap right here, but aside from that, no gapping. Cutoff of the spring is decent, but not perfect, and the blade is almost fully centered, just a little bit off that way. But that's not a huge problem, all things considered. The handle, of course, is this beautiful jet, almost inky black ebony. This is probably what most people think of when they think of ebony wood. Just deep dark black color. Very pretty. Very nice, very smooth. It's got a grain pattern, although it's a little hard to see. But you can see there is some grain in there. Very nice overall. The spring on this one is immensely strong, as with the rest. Again, I wouldn't say it's the same as this Barlow, which has, again, it's loosened a little bit, but still very strong spring. But this one is probably the closest I have to a 10. Whereas this, I would say, is probably... Ooh. Yeah, never mind. That's still a 9. That's easily still a 9. That is very strong. In the open position, you can see this is, to most people, particularly folks in the US who don't have Lambsfoot blades, this is a pretty strange looking blade. It's kind of a weird sheepfoot, almost coping blade / reverse tanto mixture, but this is a Lambsfoot. Again, traditional Sheffield made design. I believe the only other Lambsfoots, aside from custom knives, that you can buy that are not in Sheffield, I think the only one is from GEC, which of course I'd get one if I could, if they weren't $800. But yeah, this is a beautiful blade shape. Very nice, very smooth. Got that really nice little dip, that harsh curve at the front. And unlike the farmer's sheepfoot, this is very sharp. I don't have the farmer's sheepfoot with me at this very moment. Again, I said that one I gave to my dad, but perhaps I'll do a comparison in a future video. But unlike the sheepfoot, which has a very rounded blunt edge, or blunt tip, I should say, this is needle sharp. It's incredibly pointy up there. Very helpful, though, if you're going to be doing push cuts and draw cuts, which is what this is truly the best at, besides trimming lamb's hooves, that is. The stamp on this one is, again, a different one. This one just says, I'll get it to focus, made in Sheffield. Now, I know a lot of people hate this stamp because it doesn't actually say the name of the knife, but I keep mine with the rest of my Wright knives, and I of course know it's an Arthur Wright, but here you go. Here it is compared with another Lambsfoot of mine. This is the Moonraker spalted beech model with the polished blade. And this one says A. Wright and Son Limited, Sheffield, England. Here's the stamp on the Barlow, which says, get the grease out of there, Sheffield Handmade, England. Here is the Ettrick, which is just A. Wright, Sheffield, England. It doesn't have the and Son Limited. And finally, Made in Sheffield. So these are the 4 current Arthur Wright stamps that I have. I'm hoping to get the Candelabra stamp next that Ashley Harrison uses on his custom blades. But again, so you can get any of these stamps when you buy an Arthur Wright. You get Sheffield Handmade, England, A. Wright and Son Limited, Sheffield, England, A. Wright, Sheffield, England, or just Made in Sheffield. So those are the 4 stamps of Arthur Wright that I have so far. I think if I had to go with my favorite one, it would probably be this one, A. Wright, Sheffield, England. It tells you the name of the brand, unlike this one and this one. But unlike the A. Wright and Son Limited, Sheffield, England, it's very easy to fit on the tang stamp and is very clear to read. Whereas this one, you can see it kind of cuts off at the bottom because it's a bit of a large stamp. So if I had to go with my personal favorite for the tang, it would be the A. Wright, Sheffield, England, because it tells you the name of the brand, tells you where it's made, and you can read it perfectly clearly. But in the meantime, since we have some other knives out, let's do some comparisons here. To start off, here is the Ebony Lambsfoot next to the spalted beech. Let's take these off for a few seconds. You can see that the dimensions are identical. Same handle shape, same blade shape, although of course each individual blade can look slightly different. This one has a smaller nail nick, this one has a larger one. Mirror polish, satin finish. So there are some differences with the handles, but they're of course just in the materials used, and rather instead of the different handle altogether, it's just a simple different material change. Here are a couple other knives. Here is a Ettrick and another Ettrick. Again, we have the 2 and 2 here. Here is a Barlow model. And since we're bringing out a whole bunch of different Wrights, I might as well take the Senator. So again, these are all various knives you can get from Wright, just of their kind of basic lineup. And for the sake of it, since we're talking about Lambfoots, I will bring out a pair of knives that I am a little sad about, but for the sake of it, I want to bring them out just to show how much the company has improved in just a short period of time. Here is a left-handed Lambsfoot in rosewood, and a second one. Now, for those who've been on my channel for a while, you will know the history of these 2 knives, probably. And the story with this is, my original Wright purchase was this knife, but I also purchased this knife too. And this knife, again, I loved both of them, but unfortunately, well, one day, this happened. And I contacted the famous Sheffield shop, which is where I bought these, and they mentioned it to Arthur Wright, and as a replacement, they sent me this one, which is the exact same knife, left-handed Lambsfoot, rosewood. But unfortunately, as you can see, this one also broke. And at this point, I told them, look, thank you very much for the replacement, but I don't expect you to send anything else at this point. 2 knives have already been broken. I'd rather just know that the problem is being looked into, and that's enough for me. But again, people at the famous Sheffield shop, I keep saying they are some of the nicest folks ever, probably the most caring, best customer service I've ever seen. They sent me a photo of this and said, well, pretty much, we don't want to leave you with 2 broken knives that you did pay for the first one. And they wanted to send me this. They had this in stock, and they thought that I might like it. And so I got this. And this knife has not broken. And they did say that there was an integral flaw with the left-handed knives because very few people bought them. And when they actually did make them, there seemed to be some failure in the springs, the batch of springs that they used, or at least that's what I had heard. And because of that, these 2 knives, which were, again, identical, ended up breaking. However, this one was not left-handed and was of a different design, and this one still has not broken to this day, and I've had it for almost a year. So I normally don't like talking about those because, again, even if my commentary is meant to be positive in the end, and this is, I am being overall very positive about this brand. I still really like this brand. It's still worth mentioning just to show what Arthur Wright what they've become. They have managed to make knives that are simply amazing, but it's been just, a year, and a year ago they were making knives that, had worse flaws and, in this case, broke. But it just shows the growth of the company, and I'm so happy to see that we've managed to reach a point like this when it used to be like this. So, again, normally I don't like bringing up cases that are negative. I don't like to say anything bad about companies when I can, but I will say, yes, I acknowledge those knives broke. But to see what the knife company has become, and this is what they're making now, it truly does make me happy to see how far they've come. So, again, that's just my personal experience here. I just figured I'd share that little tale for those who haven't heard it yet of the misfortune that was the pair of left-hand Lambsfoots. But from what I know, this problem has been resolved. I haven't bought a left-handed knife since then, but maybe I will again, just to see if that becomes a problem again. But in the meantime, my other Lambsfoots, my right-handed ones, have had no flaws whatsoever, and have just really overall been a very positive experience. And this one, the knife that I very easily got distracted from discussing, even though that's what this video is about, this is one of their best knives yet. And again, I will say that my favorite Arthur Wright, fit and finish-wise, is still this one. This comes very close. Again, no blade play. Transition from the spring to the blade is quite good. Almost no gapping. Transitions are really nice. The inside is a little on the dirty side, but again, doesn't bother me. And this is something. The blade's straightness is not that bad. I mean, again, not the best, but certainly better than this one. It's very off to the right. This one is far closer to being perfectly centered. So, again, when I notice all these changes for the better, it makes me happy to see, because I don't want to support a company that has constant problems with their knives, but when I see a company that used to have problems, but every time I buy a new knife, my expectations are getting higher and higher, and yet the knives are still outdoing my expectations every single time, that makes me so happy to see. And this is just another example of a knife that I will be carrying, I will be using, and I will be proud to have in my collection. And it goes to show just how addictive these are. From the famous Sheffield shop, again, the shop I mentioned earlier that I dealt with the whole broken knife fiasco. I've purchased 2 more knives from them, and I'm still waiting on them in the mail. Mail is, of course, on the slower end lately, but doesn't change the fact I already have 2 more of these in the works. I'm waiting for them to arrive, and I will talk about them here on the channel, and I'll share them with all of you. But again, it makes me so happy to see what a Wright is becoming and how far they've made it. I mean, even this knife, this is a really well-made one. This is still about a year ago, and even from this knife, which I spoke very highly of, I've noticed significant improvements on this latest batch. So, every day they seem to be making noticeable changes for the better. So, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not being sponsored by them. You could argue that the free knives, that this could be considered some form of biased sponsor. But even before I received anything from this brand, I had this knife, and despite the other one breaking of the 2, I have still loved this knife despite its flaws. And this was well before I had to do any exchanges or returns or anything like that. And I just, something about this brand I really, really love. So you can be mad at me for taking this replacement for free, but again, I've said it before. A brand that supports its customers is a brand that will be supported by its customers. And from this experience, I know I will be buying many more A Wrights, and again, I am more and more impressed every day by these knives. And I've always said I want the Sheffield knife industry to come back. It kind of died out after World War II, but I think that with a combination of brands like Arthur Wright and Eyewitness and Rogers and the like, and all the different custom makers, I think that that's a very good possibility when it probably wouldn't have been, 10 years ago. So, yeah, I'm very happy with these knives, and this one is, if not my number 1 favorite, I would say of my Wright knives, it's at very least my 2nd favorite, probably right after this one. But no, again, I'm very good at getting off topic and just discussing brands as a whole and personal experiences I've had with them. But taking all these off the table for a brief spell, just this knife, my overall thoughts, 9 out of 10. I mean, the spring, it's strong enough that I don't feel like I'm worried that it will close on me. And it's not as uncomfortable to open as that Barlow. Again, the overall finish and craftsmanship is very well done. I'm a really big fan of this style of knife. And again, the steel is C70. It doesn't need to be super steel. It works well enough. And the other thing I've noticed is they're actually starting to sharpen their knives more. Not, razor sharp, but they are certainly arriving out of the box with good enough condition to cut packages and such. Maybe not whittling sharp, which is kind of the gold standard for as sharp as a knife can be, but certainly good enough to perform everyday tasks without immense difficulty, which unfortunately used to be the case with a lot of the older Arthur Wrights, even from a year ago. They'd come out of the box and you'd be struggling to open a box with one. But again, I am incredibly pleased with this knife, and I have certainly not been accused of it yet, but when it comes to knives, a lot of people are of the opinion that if you take a knife for free from a brand, it's going to affect your review. It's going to make you more biased. And I will say, You can think that, and you are very right to think that, but I personally love these knives, and if they hadn't sent me this, I still would have loved these knives. It does help to know that a company does care enough about their customers that if something breaks, they will do their utmost to fix it. But has this impacted my overall opinion of Arthur Wright to the point where I am supremely biased over other companies? No, I don't think so. If I still see a bad knife, I will point it out. And even from a year ago, I still think that this knife, it has some flaws to it. It's not bad, but it certainly has issues, and I will point those out. So, yeah, I personally think that Wright as a brand, they are going in the right direction here. I keep saying right again. It's going to sound like a pun eventually. But no, I'm not affiliated with them. I don't have any deals set up with them. And really, I don't really care if I never do. I am just happy to know that a small brand that kind of goes under the radar for a lot of people, is surviving, they're thriving, they're making better knives every time I buy from them, and they're preserving the traditions of old style Sheffield cutlery and just traditional knives as a whole. And they care about their customers. They aren't selling for ridiculously high prices. Even their premier knives, which I'm hoping to get one day, they're inexpensive. And yet they still seem to have that same excellent craftsmanship from the reviews I've seen. They're doing a great job. So I don't know what else to say. For this knife individually, I love it. I will absolutely cherish this one and carry it. Again, I found it at Heinnie Haynes. I'm pretty sure they're all sold out, but keep an eye on them. They might get a restock. And as for the brand as a whole, again, I'm very excited to see what Wright does next. Again, those two knives from the famous Sheffield shop were of immense excitement to me. I am very, very, very much anticipating reviewing them. And yeah, I hope you stick around for that review. And again, this has been the Arthur Wright & Son Ebony Lambsfoot. And this is the Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.